Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has revealed that his client's life could be at serious risk if placed in the general prison population. Diddy is urgently seeking bail following reports that several inmates are targeting him due to allegations of his abuse against minors. Former wardens and federal prosecutors have confirmed that Diddy has now become a marked individual within the prison system.
We had Sam Bankman-Fried there, R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, they were all inmates there. Sean Combs is being kept away from the general inmate population. You say his fame makes him a target.
Yeah, sure. And not necessarily at the MDC only. I mean,
anywhere.
Yes, in my humble estimation, his life, his safety is in jeopardy in any correctional lockup right now. If it is true, as reported, that he is housed in the special housing unit, it's important to note that the special housing unit is a lockdown, 24-hour lockdown unit. The MDC Brooklyn is a high-rise. The vast majority of the floors are general population floors. But the special housing unit is a 24-hour lockdown facility. So this is for Mr. Combs' protection. His incredible worldwide celebrity combined with the allegations, the charges now, and indictment, of course, of acts of violence against women make him a very attractive target.
All right.
Obviously, they need to safeguard him.
This is a man accustomed to the very finest. He was arrested at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York City, known for its luxury suites and exceptional food and wine, where one-bedroom suites start at $3,000 a night. He was probably staying in something larger. What is life like for him now at the MDC?
I would say 100% total culture shock. The MDC is, I've used the word austere a lot, but it is. It's austere, it's strict, it's impersonal, it's cold, and it is a very tough place to.
Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has described the conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, as nothing less than unbearable. Diddy is expected to be transferred to the general prison population, GP, in the coming days, sparking serious concerns about his safety. After 3 failed bail attempts and a rejected $50 million offer for house arrest, Diddy is reportedly experiencing a mental breakdown. His attorney has announced plans to file another bail request, but whether he will be granted bail remains uncertain.
Judge Carter, it did not go our way. The fight continues. We're not giving up by a long shot. I told Mr. Combs I'm going to try and get his case to trial as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and minimize the amount of time he spends in very, very difficult and I believe inhumane housing conditions in the special housing unit of the Metropolitan Detention Facility. And I'm going to do everything that I can to move his case as quickly as possible. I understand that the government has a great amount of electronic devices that they have to download and provide to me, but everything's on the government's timetable, nothing's on the defendant's timetable, and they're going to have to accommodate me and him and give us a quick trial, and I'm going to be pushing for that. He's ready, he's focused. He has been ready to defend this case since he first found out about this case. Nothing has changed from his perspective. I obviously would much prefer to fight this case with him out of jail, and we are going to try to bring that about through additional legal process. But wherever he is, his resolve is the same. He believes he's innocent. I believe he's innocent. And we're going to fight this case with all of our might until we don't have to fight any longer.
Inmates inside the prison have revealed that Diddy is struggling to cope with the harsh and unforgiving environment of incarceration. Unaccustomed to such conditions, he appears to be reaching his breaking point. The decision to deny Diddy's bail and keep him in federal custody until May 2025, when his trial is scheduled, came after prosecutors disclosed that he had attempted to contact witnesses from within the prison. Interestingly, Diddy's legal team claims that he only sought to speak with the witnesses and had no intention of pressuring or harassing them.
Tasha and Steve, for the first time in his life, Sean Diddy Combs has spent a week behind bars. He's here inside MDC, where he's been since his arrest on Monday night on federal sex trafficking and other charges, to all of which he's pleaded not guilty. There's no VIP section, there is no concierge, only con men, killers, and kingpins. MDC is so bad, federal judges have questioned the harsh conditions for those here awaiting trial. So bad I was here 2 years ago during a cold spell, reporting on detainees with no heat, pounding on windows for help. There was even a congressional inquiry, but take the word of a former inmate I spoke with who goes by Esco.
It's terrible. The food is terrible. Of course, the inmates are terrible. The guards are terrible. The conditions are terrible. It's just terrible.
The inmates that you're surrounded around, just in general, a lot of them are brought up on pretty heavy federal indictments, right? So just in terms of the atmosphere there, it's just certainly one that no one wants to be in.
Combs was placed in a special housing unit and on suicide watch, the standard protocol for high-profile celebrity detainees. The disgraced mogul was denied bail by 2 separate judges. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, asked the court to transfer him to the federal detention section at the Essex County Jail, but the judge deferred to the Bureau of Prisons. Federal trial attorney Philip Hamilton says lockdown can mean a lot less time to prepare your defense.
In terms of fighting their case, it just makes it all the more difficult, because now in terms of you being able to communicate with your attorney, you are at the realms of just what's going on with respect to the facility. Is it on lockdown? Is the facility letting visitors in?
Detainees on suicide watch wear tearaway paper hospital-style garments and rubber shower shoes. The isolation may be the worst part for Combs. It's being done for his protection in the violence-prone facility. He will have no bunkie.
He's probably not going to have any contact with any other inmates. So for him, it's going to be a little different than for a person like me, where I will go in, I will go through process and intake, and then they'll assign me a cell, and I'll have a bunkie or a cellmate, and I'll be in population.
For him to be able to get out at this point, it just doesn't look good.
Interestingly, reports suggest that Diddy has requested to be placed back on suicide watch. Inmates on suicide watch are confined to solitary for over 23 hours a day, a condition that can lead to severe mental health challenges for many prisoners. However, Diddy appears to be fully aware of the consequences if word spreads within the prison about the presence of a pedophile.
Breaking news right now, Larry. I am just getting word. People magazine says it's got a source on the inside that tells them that P. Diddy's on suicide watch tonight. Do your sources confer the same information? Are they saying it was possible?
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the SHU have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck. No stake for him. Yeah, he is on suicide watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there, he was like an overnight guest. When they told his bond hearing, now they checked him into the system, and reality has hit him. And I understand that he has a shrink coming by his cell to see him several times a day. And now there's talk about putting him in, it's like a bubble. It's like a cell that has like a plexiglass wall in it where they have inmates watching you. That's actually their job, to keep an eye on the inmates that are on suicide watch. Another error that I guess some warden told you this. There are sentenced inmates there. They're called cadre inmates. They don't have to be white collar inmates, but they're doing maintenance on the building. And the problem why there's a lot of violence there, they have housing units and they're mixing bank robbers, drug dealers, rapists with white collar people. And this is why Diddy, he can't go into a regular housing unit because somebody will take him out for sure. Somebody's gonna get a lot of street credibility out of this. People that are doing substantial time that know they're never getting out, they'll just kill a guy. No questions asked.
You think that they'd suck up to him because he's got a lot of money, and if he ever does get the commissary options, he would be able to help them.
Some people do. Because
I got to wrap it real quick.
Okay, some people do think that Diddy can help him, but this guy's going to be locked up forever. His case will probably take at least 3 years to litigate. He'll stay at MDC. There's rumors that he wants to go to Essex County Jail in New Jersey because he doesn't like MDC. He's a Marshals inmate. There's no way they're going to transfer him back and forth, I don't know, several times a week, 6 Marshals to do it.
Jersey.
He's out of luck.
Diddy's legal team offered $50 million along with a fully paid house valued at $70 million in an attempt to secure his release. They also proposed that Diddy and his family surrender their passports, acknowledging that significant concessions were necessary for his bail. However, Judge Aaron denied the request, emphasizing that no offer could guarantee the safety of the victims. As a result, Diddy remained in jail, even through the holidays. While incarcerated, he reportedly used secure phone lines to pressure victims' calls that were all recorded.
What he did here is on a magnitude of unlike anybody else you could imagine. A week after those public searches were televised, he gave us his passport. His children gave us his passport. He then paid off the mortgage entirely on his Miami home, $18 million. It's instructive that he's gonna have a bail package ready so that if he was arrested, he would have something ready so that he could get out the next day and show the judge he's taking this very seriously, which he is, which is why 12 days ago, Chris, when we thought there's an indictment that may be coming, he flew to New York the very next day. And that's an extraordinary move for a defendant who's been under investigation that he's been aware of for at least 6 months. He has done everything somebody under investigation can do. I can't think of anything else that he could have done. He's fighting, he's innocent, and he's gonna be able to show it.
What do you think about that counter argument? Because his team has said we're going to put together the proposed bail package, a $50 million bond, co-signed by him, his mom, and his sister, the mother of his oldest daughter, and his 3 adult sons. It's going to be secured by the equity in his property in Miami, Florida. Home detention, his passport will be surrendered. The government said that's insufficient. They said, look at the charges, look at the weight of the evidence that I just mentioned. They said they have allegations that he and his associates were trying to tamper with witness testimony last year so that they wouldn't cooperate with the government. What do you take away about who has the stronger argument in terms of bail?
Well, I think his counsel has done the best they possibly can. I think bringing him there voluntarily is very smart, starts them out on the right foot. But I think the last thing that you just mentioned, the interfering with witnesses.
That's the allegation, yeah.
Yeah, if that's true, or I should say, if there's real indicia that happened, I think that might tip the scales in favor of not letting him out pending trial, because I think, and you know this, I think judges take an extraordinarily dim view of that. And that might be the factor that tips the scale against him. But I think as far as attack...
Things are escalating for Diddy inside the prison, with reports suggesting he is experiencing severe nervous breakdowns and living in constant fear of being attacked. He's desperate to get out as soon as possible. Meanwhile, things aren't looking good outside the prison either, a situation we'll delve into later. For now, it's important to note that 3 of Diddy's key co-conspirators have also been named in lawsuits and may soon be joining him behind bars. Rumors are also circulating that Diddy has lost hope in his case and is contemplating suicide.
According to a report from the Daily Mail, that's why Diddy had a breakdown. A person close to him apparently said, quote, spending the holidays behind bars was a nightmare for him. If we're to believe all this, Diddy had a meltdown in his cell and begged the guards to take him to the hospital for observation, but they refused. This same friend or person told the Daily Mail, quote, he eventually managed to calm himself down with the meditation technique he's been using while he's been behind bars. It took him a few hours of deep breathing and focusing to get out of the bad space he was in, but he finally managed it. This isn't the first time Diddy's mental health has come into question while he's been at MDC. When he first arrived, he was on suicide watch, which the U.S. Department of Justice National Institute of Corrections describes as supervisory precautions taken for suicidal inmates that require frequent observation. Diddy's suicide watch was only temporary, though. He was housed in a special protective unit of the jail after that for the first few weeks of his stay. But Diddy right now is in Gen Pop, meaning general population, the place where majority of the inmates stay. And that's where he apparently had this meltdown over the holidays, at least according to one source.
He's suffering the consequence, and I don't feel bad for him at all. Because people was trying to talk to him. People was trying to tell him. You couldn't pull him by the coat and let him know anything. You understand? They messed up the game, brother. When you put that shit out with them, money, power, respect, it ain't never been like that. It ain't never been like that. You got your respect in the street that gave you your power, that brought you your money. Totally different thing. He let that money, power, and respect go to his head, but he had it ass backwards. So do I care what happened? Nah. He got enough money to buy his way out of this. So we think.
So when you look at that video of him pacing around and he's looking worried, and you knowing him, do you think it's possible that he might commit suicide?
When you're a narcissist, there's always a possibility because you're suffering. But I don't think that he could see himself in a cage. I don't think he could see himself behind those bars in those type of situations. It's too many real dudes that dislike him. But then again, there's a lot of real dudes that need help. And him being behind bars, he could probably help them.
There's really no deal that the U.S. Attorney's Office can offer, and it's certainly not one that Diddy will accept. It would involve decades in federal prison. We're talking about mandatory minimum sentences of 10 years for both the drug charges and the sex trafficking. So we know that Diddy has fought charges before. There were state charges, there were gun-related, the nightclub shooting with J-Lo, but he's going to dig in his heels, and this case is going to trial. So if you're prosecutors, you really want to make sure that your evidence is bulletproof before you go down that road.
In recent days, Lay's legal team has admitted to the existence of his so-called freak-off tapes, attempting to address the situation out of desperation. They have asserted that while these tapes do exist, they do not depict Diddy exploiting anyone. According to his lawyers, 9 such tapes are in existence, and they argue that these recordings actually serve to prove Diddy's innocence.
Having reviewed these videos, it is now abundantly clear that they confirm Mr. Combs' innocence and that their full exculpatory value cannot be investigated and used unless they are electronically produced. The 9 videos at issue are the so-called freak-off tapes with victim 1 that the government has repeatedly referenced, causing wild speculation in the media. Contrary to what the government has led this court and the public to believe, the so-called freak-offs were private sexual activity between fully consenting adults in a long-term relationship. Like many Americans in the privacy of their own bedrooms, they sometimes film their sexual activity. These videos unambiguously show that the person alleged in the indictment to be victim 1 not only consented, but thoroughly enjoyed herself. And we believe, by the way, victim 1 to be Cassandra Ventura. This is Diddy's ex, who first filed that initial sexual assault lawsuit against Combs back in 2023. She was in that infamous surveillance footage that was published by CNN of an incident that happened in a hotel hallway where Combs is beating Ventura just while wearing a towel. It's a very disturbing video. He argues the videos don't show any orgies or celebrities or violence or coercion or threats or manipulation or evidence of anyone being under the influence of drugs, that this is not sex trafficking. Quote, the premise that freak-offs are inherently dangerous shows that the government seeks to police non-conforming sexual activity and that it assumes, despite all evidence to the contrary, that a woman's willing participation must have been coerced. That's interesting because that's something we've long suspected, that the defense is not going to shy away from the term freak-offs. They might accept, yeah, Combs called these freak-offs, but this was entirely consensual. It was all on the up and up. It might be different to you and me, but there's nothing illegal going on here.
If they're really, if the government is the government in the Southern District of New York, I can't imagine this is what they're hanging their hat on if it's what the defense describes. It's like one of those things that when you have a weakness in a case, the government has to decide how they're going to use that. My guess is they're going to use it to show that there were sex workers, that these sex workers were paid. I would imagine that they have the sex workers that are in the video to come in and describe what was going on or what happened before they went on tape, whether or not they had drugs or alcohol or anything else, whether or not Cassie had drugs or alcohol, whether or not there was a discussion between Sean Combs and Cassie before the tape started. So
Right.
I think that the tape is going to be one portion of it, but the testimony of either the sex workers that were in the video and or Cassie is going to kind of tie it together. That's my...
Diddy appears to be losing on all fronts. Inside the jail, he's reportedly at his breaking point. While outside, his troubles are dragging his associates into the spotlight. Jennifer Lopez, Diddy's ex-girlfriend, has now been named a material witness in a lawsuit. Alleged victim Cardello Smith claims that Diddy assaulted him in 1997 during a party at a Holiday Inn in Detroit. Smith alleges that Diddy recorded the incident and that Jennifer Lopez played a role in covering it up.
Cardello Smith's filing. His notice says that Jennifer Lynn Lopez, aka J-Lo, aka Jenny from the Block, quote, will be called as a material witness and expert to Sean Combs' viewing, possession, and distribution of his sexual assault upon the plaintiff in 1997 and the orders of defendant Sean Combs forcing Jennifer Lopez to remain silent about the videotaped sexual assault of plaintiff by defendant. Plaintiff states that the material witness Jennifer Lynn Lopez, also known as J-Lo and Jenny from the Block, was engaged in a relationship with the defendant Sean Combs during 1999 and 2001, and that the sexual assault of the plaintiff was recorded, distributed, and held by the defendant at his New York residence and recording studio. And during the relationship with Jennifer Lopez, she was made privy to this video that was taken by Sean Combs and his employee Kirk Burrows. She, J-Lo, has known this video existed and was in existence and took no action to make it known to anyone in law enforcement, and that she was even questioned by New York Police Detective Derek Palmer about this matter, and that the report will show that her answers to this tape was and still remains a resounding yes to its existence. And again, Cardello Smith writes that he wants to call Officer Derek Palmer as a witness because he says Palmer is the one who questioned Lopez and believes that he will have testimony that could help his case. As I mentioned, Diddy's legal team has called for this entire case to be thrown out. Cardello Smith has filed a massive response to that request that totaled more than 200 pages. Probably half of it was just straight up copies of case law that seems to support his arguments, word for word. It's something out of like a legal textbook. There's so much to slog through, but I kind of want to give you some of the highlights. So first, in addition to the claims of rape and a cover-up, Cardello Smith also claims and alleges that Combs was violent towards his loved ones. At times, Cardello Smith addresses alleged threats against his family. Other times, he says Combs actually caused serious injuries to his brother. His response reads, defendant used threats of murder to force the plaintiff to not bring the case to any court of law enforcement until the homes of the defendant were raided by Homeland Security, that the plaintiff knew it was a safe time to bring the case, and that is why we are here at this juncture. And Cardello Smith argued that fear for his own safety and the safety of his family is one of the main reasons that he waited so long to report the alleged rape, and says that that reason alone should override any issue with the statute of limitations, that these claims might be otherwise be time barred. And he also argues that while he's been in prison, fellow inmates and prison guards have threatened him on behalf of Sean Combs.
Officers involved in the raid on Diddy's mansion have also shared their statements, with one officer stating bluntly that Diddy is finished. Without delving into too many details, the officer revealed that items such as baby oil and sex tapes were among the key pieces of evidence recovered from Diddy's home. In reality, the evidence gathered from the scene was more than sufficient to justify pre-trial detention without bail.
P. Diddy's gotten a hall pass. He's actually created his own kingdom where he makes his own rules, and you got to follow his rules or you get penalized. And guess what, Laura? He's now in a federal penitentiary, and for the first time in his life, he's facing his own fate at the hands of somebody else. And I will tell you, Laura, I've done federal cases, that's not the place you want to be in federal court. 90% of federal criminal indictments brought down are pled out, right? A plea deal is brought. And of the only 10% left, 90% of those defendants that go to trial, they lose. So he is looking at a daunting uphill battle to fight these horrible charges.
Now, Brian, one of the DHS agents involved in this raid on his Miami mansion described what he saw inside the house, saying that, in my opinion, he's as bad as Epstein. These women are young, either barely legal or barely illegal. Brian, this sounds like he was a monster.
Yeah, Laura, I will tell you that this indictment was very detailed, by the way, too. Your viewers should know there were over 300 subpoenas served. over 50 witnesses interviewed. Why is that important? Because the federal prosecutors aren't going to be leveling an indictment like this unless they have ammunition and they have cause to bring it. And the core issue at this case, which the feds have to prove, which it's looking like they can, is that P. Diddy essentially controlled these women, that he threatened them with stopping the money that he was paying them, that he spiked their drinks with drugs, that's been alleged in the indictment, and that he basically told them, I'm going to ruin your life unless you engage in these freak-offs. And that's really what the prosecutors got to prove. And if you've got some victims coming forward to talk about that, you've got financial records that prove that, travel itinerary that proves that, P. Diddy has very little defense. And I got to tell you, Laura, if this guy wants to fight these charges, he's going to have to step up and walk into a courtroom and talk about it. If he doesn't testify in this case, he is dead on arrival.
Well, who else is on these tapes? I mean, will the tapes ever see the light of day? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. Who else is there? It's like with the Epstein, his pleasure island. Who else? Who went? Who was there? What's the manifest? But Brian, chances 1 being least likely, 10 being most likely. Will we learn of other celebrities that were at these freak-offs?
Yeah, I think you've got an 8 or a 9 for a likelihood you're going to hear about it. Why? Because there are going to be more indictments coming down, Laura. That's an important point here, because he's being charged with racketeering and conspiracy. You're going to have, well, let's start on the inner circle. You're going to have former bodyguards. You're going to possibly have former musicians that he was with. You've got personal assistants that are going to be, they're already talking about this. Some of those are likely to be charged. And then guess what? If you've got some music moguls that are sending women over to these alleged freak-offs, then you've got some top people that are going to start crumbling too, because they're all part of what's called this criminal enterprise.
And that's where things stand for Diddy locked away, losing ground both inside and outside the courtroom. His legal battles and personal struggles seem to grow darker with each passing day. The walls are closing in, and his attempts to regain his freedom are becoming more desperate than ever. As we continue to uncover shocking new details about his case, one thing is clear: this story is far from over.